They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. As I bring in hurricane expert Dan Kottlowski, and Dan, that satellite, the whole presentation is getting not only organized, but bigger and more impressive.
Exactly. Now, keep in mind that it takes a while for the wind field to catch up with the satellite image. The satellite image often looks much more impressive, so it takes 3 to 6 hours. Notice the pressure's dropped down to 981 millibars, 28.97 inches, and but the winds are still at 75. So when the aircraft is flying into the storm, they still have not found stronger winds yet. However, those as the pressure falls, the winds begin to tighten up, or the pressure begins to tighten up, and then basically that causes the winds to increase. So when this passed close to Grand Cayman, they did not have nearly as much wind in Grand Cayman as maybe some people thought, because it still doesn't have its wind field together just yet, which is great news for Grand Cayman. But they're still getting wind gusts to near just above tropical storm force, but again, the worst of the winds are beginning to begin to set up northwest of them. So the eye is now aiming for western Cuba.
Rapid intensification, Dan, right through Tuesday morning.
Exactly. Very warm water in place of our northwestern portions of the Caribbean into southeast portions of the Gulf of Mexico. It's interesting, the deep warm water, though, kind of fades as you get closer to the west coast of Florida. So the deep warm water is actually a couple of 100 miles off the west coast of Florida.
The movement north continuing over the northwest tip of Cuba. Dan, there is some mountainous areas there, but this is more going to be like a speed bump than it is a wall when it comes to intensification.
Exactly. There are some peak elevations around 16, maybe 1,700 feet in western Cuba, so there will be a little bit of a erosion of the storm to some degree, but not much, because again, this is going to be a pretty good sized storm. It'll be close to a major hurricane when it will be a major hurricane when it hits western Cuba, and so therefore, again, it's not going to take much, because it's going to be moving enough to not worry about the mountains.
You know, every hurricane, you and I have been tracking these for 30 years, every hurricane's had forks in the road. The first fork was the intensification. We're past that. Here's the next fork, Dan. It all hinges here on Tuesday, and it hinges on the strength of this trough coming across the Midwest. I'm going to put this into motion, Dan. You can see as the trough comes south, Ian comes north.
Right.
Here is the time frame that we're talking about,
right.
and it depends upon the depth and also the shape of the trough. Explain, Dan.
Exactly. So the U.S. global model has a trough like this. The European model has a trough more like this. So because of that dip, that's why the European brings it in much closer to Tampa. The GFS, the U.S. global model, takes it more into here because the trough is not as deep. Now, that's going to lift out, so that means the steering flow is going to weaken.
Right.
And so therefore, this thing's going to slow down, and that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, and you'll notice it slows down. It does weaken a little bit, but its impacts continue. And you know what, Dan? We really think it's important, and that's why we're doing this here on the AccuWeather Network, not only showing you it could be a little bit to the left or right, but we're showing you the exact track that we're thinking right now, because the track matters. Exactly,
because that's where the core of the worst conditions are. Keep in mind, when this weakens, the wind circulation, the wind's going to get bigger. And so you will still have the impacts. So just because it goes to a 4 to a 2, the surge will be like that of a 4, because it takes sometimes 24, 36 hours to dissipate. So keep that in mind. Just because it weakens doesn't mean the surge will weaken. The surge could be just as strong as if it were a Cat 4.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, check out these other videos here, and be sure to subscribe for new content and the latest weather news from AccuWeather.